two. Whew, that was the worst. I quit and got
In
in.
this situation, by saying you're having pain, yeah, you should have pain because you are 600. You're the one who keeps choosing to give up.
But I
I'd like to see if I could do your program and get a little bit better guidance to make that change.
Okay. Heart is overstrained because of your weight, and your lung capacity is restricted.
Number 4. Chris's struggles. Chris was at the end of his tether. When we met him, he was so far gone in his food obsession that his body was fast giving out under the burden he'd put on it. Lesser men have given up for far less, but the only light at the end of his tunnel, which was keeping him going, was the love he felt for his beautiful daughter.
The meal with my stomach, not with my brain. So I have a really big meal, and when I start eating, as soon as Taco Tuesday and mom happened to bring home a big bag of tacos, if you didn't eat as much as you could eat, and that's when my mom met a new guy, everything kind of started going downhill from there. I don't know if mom would be working, mom wouldn't be working. We were bouncing from place to place.
I'd have been here sooner.
I know.
So what do you want? What do you need for you? Whatever you need me to do.
I'm gonna need you a lot.
I wish I could have been here sooner.
Chris's present predicament was a product of his upbringing. Growing up, food had been a pleasure trip of fried fats, and his mum had used him as a life-sized dustbin by feeding him leftovers, which set Chris on his path of self-destruction. Even as Chris was describing all the ways in which overeating had made his life a dismal mess, he was preparing a huge banquet, big enough to feed an entire army. It was clear that Chris was clutched firmly in the grasp of his addiction to food, as he continued to contradict himself. What was interesting was the clarity of thought Chris had about the reason behind the difficulties of his existence. He was clear that the pleasure and happiness he felt by eating the food was the reason he decided to indulge himself, yet this indulgence was feeding the Leviathan taking over his life and crushing his hopes and dreams. On another occasion, Chris actually blamed his loneliness and considered it a fait accompli that not being surrounded by people was pushing him towards the comfort of food.
My legs would have been wrecked.
So I just started to move, and I thought, oh, wait a minute, it moved too far, too fast.
All right, now I'm gonna pull it back. Get a spaghetti sandwich.
Why am I acting like I don't know how to twirl this?
How do you feel about Daddy being really big? I forgot about Checkers, it was fun.
Yeah.
Well, when I lose some weight, we can start doing that stuff again.
When he got to Dr. Nowzaradan's clinic, he was beyond the 600-pound point. He got onto the weight loss wagon with gusto and received his first boon at his second weigh-in, where he found out that he had lost more than 50 pounds in 1 month. Buzzed with his weight loss, Chris became the poster boy for commitment for self-improvement and self-love, and it was an absolute pleasure watching him turn his life around.
Oklahoma?
Oklahoma, yep.
Well, how was the trip down to Houston?
Hours.
Okay. So who's the driver?
Mom.
All right. So what brought you down to Houston?
Well, it's been, my weight mainly. My mom in 7 years, so.
Wow, you haven't seen your mom in 7 years. What brought her your mom down?
To be here to start this journey with him, so I said I'd be here, and I flew in.
Goals. I mean, my biggest thing is I want to do things with my daughter, but I also want to.
Every weekend? Okay. So right now you're not working?
Yeah. But I need to change a lot of this. I mean, I've been heavy in the past, but we've still been able to do things.
Number 3. LaTonya pays a price. LaTonya's story was a long and protracted one. She had initially wandered in through the doors of Dr. Now's clinic more than 5 years before, weighing 482 pounds, and had fallen off the face of the earth. She had re-emerged from hiding once again, but this time in more desperate circumstances, with her boyfriend Devon in tow. With a weight gain of another 200 pounds, her body could ill afford. She was dependent on a motorized wheelchair she used as her personal mechanical steed. Despite her less than stellar condition, it was amazing to hear her call food her best friend, even though it was her worst enemy, which had taken much from her, including her ability to move around.
Have to make some changes. So he wanted me to lose 40 pounds. My legs look like an apple.
Okay.
But baby, I'm okay.
I am proud of LaTonya and how
Be Because I usually be in my chair, but about me being in pain today, in the bed. So the bed.
It had imprisoned her on an island bed at a very young age and was slowly but surely squeezing the life out of her existence. But did that stop Latonia from her food-eating marathons? Of course not. Her disappointment and self-loathing were not stopping her from putting that next loaded spoonful in her mouth. Once again, she was put on a strict diet by Dr. Nalzaradan, who had thrown in a personal physiotherapist in the mix in a desperate attempt to help his patient.
Healthy for so long, and like now, trying to change it is kind of...
Help you start getting out of your chair. And you didn't do that. And you were supposed to lose 40 pounds or as wheelchair. You don't want to give that up. You don't want to give up your eating habit. But you didn't follow the diet. You keep eating too much and you won't admit it. And so much to yourself you believe that you lie.
Latonia worked up a good appetite indeed from the little bit of thrashing around she did in bed, and looked forward to eating a good meal after expending so much energy. When her mother pointed out that fried food was probably not the best option for her, she comforted Mum by saying that she would just take a little bite, and proceeded to finish her plate. The consequences of her choices became brutally apparent on her next appointment with Dr. Now, who confronted her with a 4-pound weight gain instead of loss. But it soon became apparent that that was the least of her problems. Latonia ended up in hospital in excruciating pain, and her lab results were indicating a heart under stress. Undergoing such a medical emergency could put the fear of fried food in any one of us, but not Latonia. She was made of sterner stuff, and we were treated to the astonishing sight of her throwing a hissy fit over the food on offer in the hospital.
And this look like dog food.
You don't like meat?
I don't eat stuff like this.
This,
I don't eat that kind of meat. I haven't really ate nothing since I've been here.
you're not gonna fade away. Okay? Now, the echocardiogram show all the 4 chambers of what you consider to be a healthy food.
Yes, sir.
We got your heart out of a critical place because there's something wrong with your eating habit that you're not losing weight.
Number 2. Irene's sad story. Irene Walker, a 39-year-old woman who lived in Houston, Texas, weighed about 600 pounds. She was living in an apartment with her son, daughter-in-law and niece, who were her primary caregivers when we saw her. Life was hard for Irene, who had become dependent on the care of others for the most degrading, smallest of things. In some ways, it wasn't Irene's fault, since she was surrounded by enablers. Her close friend Trina would bring all her favourite foods so she could dive in, despite knowing that this food would eventually take her life.
What I'm eating, I just want to be left alone to eat. I don't want to hear all that.
Baked chicken, I'm trying to eat healthy for the kids, you know?
You got your children, I don't have my children.
Yeah.
But because I pray every day.
Pray without ceasing.
That my kids come home.
But anyway, I'll see you later.
Okay.
But that didn't stop her from shoveling food into her mouth as if life depended on it. But was Irene done with the food once she'd finished it all? Of course not. Astoundingly, this sharp little mama had set up an entire supply chain for herself, which would keep her happily munching on food throughout the whole day. Mimi, Irene's niece, had a heart as big as Texas, and even though she constantly worried for her aunt, she was more afraid that if she didn't get her the food she wanted, she would just get mad at her. Number 1. Lisa's fall from grace. Lisa was the woman who became the poster child for the worst self-excuses for their unhealthy eating ways. She was a whopping 700+ pound woman who had been bedridden and dependent upon her family members, waiting on her hand and foot when we met her. Her condition was so dire that she had to be hospitalized and given strict supervised care by professionals to ensure her survival. This had never been her dream for her life. Her fall from grace began when her father left her to strict ministrations of her mother. Struggling under the weight of a critical mother, Lisa turned to food, which seemed like the perfect panacea for her problems. She seemed to experience a watershed event with the passing of her brother, for which, strangely, her mother blamed her. That was one twist in the story of her life she was unable to come out of unscathed, and what followed were various attempts by a team of doctors under Nalzaradan's care, as well as well-meaning family members attempting to get Lisa to change her self-suffocating ways and take responsibility for her life.
I feel like you are giving up on me.
We have done everything we can how to change your eating habit, and you have a helper at home. You had psychotherapy.
Eat, and I want to eat it, and I want to eat some more. And once I owe myself,
Listen, you can control yourself and your eating habit. You're lying to me, and you've given me this act 1,000 times.
okay, okay, don't disrespect you, and I haven't. But what you not gonna do, what you do, but what you don't do is come at me that way.
What they got instead was Lisa blaming everyone and the dog for her problems, instead of her taking responsibility for her own decisions and actions. Even a well-meaning visit from the nutritionist Dr. Jennifer Doktorovich was welcomed by a Lisa who was dead set in her ways and determined to hold on to a faulty lifestyle.
I have to be lost at least 30 to 40 pounds.
And there's bread. I'm definitely not a white bread fan.
Neither am I. That piece of roll fed.
Let's see. Well, I also see a giant... Okay, Lisa?
Has nothing to do with me.
This is going in the garbage.
Store today.
Okay, Lisa. I can tell you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. That's what I'm trying to get to. Remember, you don't have to be honest with me. You have to be honest with you. Work to do here. All this is garbage.
Well.
Rewards for love? Is that what you mean?
Not love. Mm-hmm. Please.
We were treated to the hilarious sight of Jennifer poking around in Lisa's fridge and extracting load after load of calorie-laden unhealthy food. If only Lisa could move around and step off of that bed, she would have launched herself onto the poor doctor to save the food for herself. Just listen to her put the blame on poor Herbert that the food was necessary to spice things up with her partner. Sadly, Lisa did not make it much farther in her life, as most who tread this path find out much too quickly. That's all we have for you folks. Join us next time.